Can they engineer a soft landing? Whether they do 4 hikes, 7 hikes, 10 hikes, I don't think that's really going to materially slow inflation, unfortunately.
It looks like Bitcoin's winning.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bitcoiner's Guide, episode 4. Man, I can't believe it's already been 4 weeks. Yep. And this is Bitcoiner's Guide, where we take you to the top of the Bitcoin rabbit hole, but it's up to you to put in the proof of work hours to really understand what Bitcoin is. This show is for people who are a little newer to Bitcoin and just coming into this space, or even as a refresher to those who are a little bit more versed. We are your hosts today, Big Sean Harris and Plan Marcus. Marcus, how's your trade going?
Hey, Sean, what's up? Glad to be here again. My second episode. It's already episode number 4. So yeah, I'm ready for it. Let's do this.
Let's do it. All right.
Good. Holding Bitcoin.
Yeah. This is gonna be a really good episode. I'm excited. Timestamp today. It is 7:19 in the beautiful Canary Islands where I am. Just looking up the price right now of Bitcoin is $40,000, 953. So, down 0.81% in the last 24 hours. Today's show is going to be a good one. I'm very excited. We're going to start off with Marcus's Bitcoiner's Guide tip of the week, which I am very excited to hear. We also have some news around nation state adoption and the Bitcoin bond from El Salvador, as well as we're going to talk a little bit more about, is Bitcoin power projection or power protection? That's kind of been going on fire recently on Bitcoin Twitter. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about price. That's something that you got to be able to wrap your mind around, and we're excited to get into it. So with no further ado, let's get it started. Go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, so it's always fun trying to think back on okay, what would be a great tip of the week for newcomers. Ultimately, I came up with this one. We're gonna have a lot of tips of the week, so I want to talk about lowering your time preference, changing your unit of account, and taking your time, basically, because Bitcoin is going to be around for a long time. You have a long time, whether you're old or young. You don't have to rush anything. Don't worry too much about what the price is doing today versus yesterday. And to cope with that, I thought I'd go dive a little deeper into that. And yeah, for some reason in my mind, I always keep comparing Bitcoin to a glass of beer, right? And especially because Bitcoin is so volatile. And because of its volatility, it can be really frustrating. It can be stressful, scary, sometimes hopeful, ecstatic, exuberant. Yeah. All the different emotions come into play, right? The price, this is Bitcoin. We just know it has been that way. It's probably going to be staying that way for the foreseeable future, at least. If you have a high time preference, it's going to stay volatile. Maybe if you have a longer outlook, at some point, maybe the glass will be full and maybe the volatility will be gone. So that's kind of a little look forward to how I'm comparing it to this glass of beer, because imagine you have an empty glass of beer, Sean. I know you don't drink, right? But in your case, we'll talk about, what is it, sparkling water?
Yeah, sparkling water, that's good. I like that.
Well, I like to stick to beer though, but imagine you have this empty beer glass being filled with beer from a tap, right? The beer coming into the Bitcoin is the glass. Those are the new entrants and users coming into Bitcoin, putting some form of monetary value into the glass. And the price is actually the level of the beer in the glass. So, you can actually draw, if there's just beer in a glass, it's been sitting still, you can draw an exact line at the top of the beer level. But when it's pouring in, it's volatile. The beer hits against the glass, the waves come in and out, and also the guy operating the tap is like closing it and turning it back off due to macroeconomic events. and people looking at how fast the beer is flowing upwards, it'll cause more people to rush in, but then when it seems to stall a little bit, they're all like evaporating out of the glass again, and froth starts to form. Beer is really frothy, so it adds this layer of foam on top of the price. So what is the price now? The top with the froth or just the base layer? So imagine looking at that glass in like with a high-speed camera, slowing it way down, because that's how we are looking at the Bitcoin adoption rate. You know, you'll fill a glass of beer in what, a couple of seconds, 10 seconds maybe max. But when you're looking at the Bitcoin glass filling up, this is going to take probably a decade or two before we get to full adoption. And probably it'll never be fully adopted, but it'll take a long time. It'll take something. I mean, it's already around for more than a decade now, but it's still filling up. And when you look at percentages, we've talked about this, you know, there's all kind of places you could look at to try to predict a little bit how far is the glass filled now, how fast are people coming in. But you know what? You just got to zoom out. You got to lower your time preference, because don't worry about the waves. You know, when you're zoomed in, looking at week to week, day to day movements, there's going to be fraud going and ebbing and flowing, and the price is going to be volatile. But if you just look at long terms, you just know, hey, this glass is filling steadily. There is some frothiness that I'm going to have to go through in the short term, but ultimately the real price level will just keep going up and up and up, as long as the fundamentals are there and people are still adopting it and Bitcoin is spreading. So that would be my tip of the week. You know, if you're trying to understand what the Bitcoin price is doing, it's a complex system. There's a lot going on there. You have macroeconomic events. You've got users coming in. You've got demand, you got fear and greed, all that kind of stuff. So just zoom out, think about the long-term plan. That's what you know is going, that's somewhat predictable. You can clearly see it's happening. What's going to happen with the fraud on the short term, who knows, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, I'll cut it off there. Is that, like, do you have any ways of visualizing how the price, or something that relates to how you look at Bitcoin or Bitcoin's price or its path into adoption?
Yeah, I like that, and I like that analogy to a glass of beer. But you're always kind of bearish when it comes to Bitcoin's price. But even so, I look at it more like waves, kind of how you're saying, you know, waves from the sea. You know, the tide, it'll rise, but the waves that come in, they come out, they come in and they come out. And as the tide continues to rise, as those waves come in and out, the price keeps going up. And so I really like that. Volatility is just something you have to get used to. It's a natural thing, a natural phenomenon of the world. And as things continue to grow, as the Bitcoin price continues to go up, more and more people realize that the volatility, volatility to the downside, it hurts. It feels bad. You feel like, where did I get it wrong? But you need to have that volatility to the downside so that there's volatility to the upside. And that's why I think a lot of people say that they don't like volatility, but in reality, volatility is something that when you invest in something, if you have volatility to the upside, that's something that you want to, strap onto that rocket and get ready to watch it go up. And that's why I think a lot of people do come into Bitcoin. But if you're going to take those rides up, you have to be able to stomach those rides down as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, coming back to that beer glass, if you don't want volatility, then we're going to have to close the tap so far that there's only a small trickle of people coming in to reduce all that volatility. But we don't want that, right? We want lots of people to come in, so there's going to be a lot of volatility.
Yeah, and
volatility.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's my Dutch. I'm trying to articulate properly in English. So sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just saying, yeah, the more people that come in to Bitcoin, there's going to be people that buy Bitcoin, and they watch it go down and they panic sell, and then they're out forever. There's a lot of people, especially a lot of journalists that came to Bitcoin a few years back when the price was, under $1,000, and they either they bought some or they wrote a piece about Bitcoin, how it's a bubble, and then they've just watched it rise up to $40,000 where it is today, and now they're just affected by it. Now they can't, in their minds, they think, I can't buy Bitcoin because, I was hating on it at $1,000. How am I going to buy it at $40,000? and you have to take a little bit of that humble pie and just sit back and relax, and Bitcoin will humble anyone that's truly trying to invest. You have to come at it with an open mind. You have to come at it understanding that maybe I don't know everything about Bitcoin, about its markets, how it's so free, free as in, it's an open and free market. Anyone can come into it if they have money, if they have internet connection. And there's a lot of people that are going to hodl, and they're just going to keep stacking sats, and they're going to hodl what they stack, and they're just going to wait through all that volatility. And that's kind of where we've gotten to, is at this point, it just makes the most sense to stack and wait out all that volatility.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what you mentioned there, like humble pie. That's that really hits home for me. I've been humbled on Bitcoin Twitter. Coming in early, thinking, just having your view on things just reset. Basically, things that you thought were set in stone or that were solid. Just like, whoa, wait a minute, I have to. Oh, I was really wrong here. This is a different way of looking at it, which sounded preposterous when I heard it the first time. So I was inclined to go against it.
Yeah.
And this kind of stuff creates a lot of, especially on Bitcoin Twitter. It's funny, to see sometimes these discussions start. Talking about Bitcoin Twitter, Sean, you've got some news for us today, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, our first news piece of the day isn't necessarily a piece of news, but lately, Bitcoin Twitter is this amazing place where a lot of people come, and anyone can say basically anything. And then if their idea catches fire, or if they keep trying to push an idea that may not make sense, people are going to tell them, that idea is dumb, or, hey, I think there's a lot to it, or you're going to get a little bit of both. And I think that's what happened recently this week. There's a guy named Jason Lowry, and he's been saying lately that Bitcoin is power projection, that Bitcoin is violence, that Bitcoin is a weapon. And he comes from a military Air Force background, and that's kind of where he sees it, that he sees Bitcoin, and he's a proponent of Bitcoin. He likes Bitcoin. And so I think I wanted to talk about, is Bitcoin really power projection, or is it more power protection? And I think, getting down to the definition matters. I think because the truth matters, right? And to understand the truth, the definition of words matter. His point, basically, I haven't listened to everything that he's done, but I've listened to some of it, right? And it's hard to listen to everything that anyone's done before. But basically, his idea is that, since the beginning of the world, life has been competing for energy resources to continue to live and grow as a species, whatever that species may be. For example, trees, if they want to continue living, then they have to continue to do everything possible to gain energy from the sun. And people, right, we have to eat food, and that's how we gain energy, through our metabolism. And so basically, any species that consumes energy to be able to live is power projection. And in his words, he said that photosynthesis is power projection, which I kind of laughed at when I heard it, because, I don't normally think about photosynthesis, the absorption of sun, as power projection. And so, or violence, or a weapon, So my response is, I think it comes down to more what we think the purpose of life is. And I know that's it's like, wow, we're talking about Bitcoin, and all of a sudden we're talking about the purpose of life in today's episode. But you know what? That's where we're going. And so I was thinking a lot about it, and it's basically, I've been thinking, is life's main goal to compete or to cooperate for progression? And I look at it like, is the purpose of the deer, does the deer know that he's cooperating when he feeds the lion? Does it matter that the deer doesn't understand that he's continuing the circle of life, not just his own species? And and I look at someone who's in the military, and I think if all of life is a war game, if it's all war, does a birth of a baby, does that also mean power projection? Is that also violence? Is that also a weapon because it's propagating life? And Robert Breedlove, he tweeted, and he was kind of for what Jason Lauer was saying, and he tweeted out and he said that offense and defense is a false dichotomy. In the real world, there is only maneuver warfare. And I kind of think like, well, in the mind of the warrior or the war machine, everything is war. Just like in the mind of the basketball player, everything relates to basketball. Or the mind of the poet, all is beauty. Or in the mind of the artist, all is music. In the mind of the chef, all is food. And if all is food and energy for life is power projection, well, then you better believe that banana bread is violence. So, which shout out to Yellow and ICO Fender for banana bread. I just wanted to kind of finish it up with in history, normally the world reserve currency would take over through war. That's basically how the United States dollar after World War II became the world reserve currency. And you can kind of see that throughout all of history, that the new money that takes over, it normally happens through war. There's a country that's backing that currency. Arizonan Hodl, he said financial censorship is a weapon and Bitcoin is censorship resistant. And Dear Gigi said that Bitcoin is more like the shell of a turtle because it's protecting, and Bitcoin miners produce a protective layer. It's not a weapon, it's a shield. And I look at it the same way, in the analog world, which was war, that's how, the dollar became the world reserve currency through war. But I think in the cyber world or the digital world, Bitcoin will be able to go through its rise as a shield, as a defense. And I think that's the difference, is it's whoever has the most defense in the cyber world and the digital world is normally the one that wins, not the one who has the most offense. So, is Bitcoin, is it power projection? Is it power protection? I think that's up for you to decide. In my opinion, I think it's power protection. No disrespect to anyone who thinks it's power projection, right? Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I just don't look at Bitcoin as a weapon. I don't look at it as violence. I don't look at it as power projection. I look at Bitcoin as peace. I look at it as a tool of freedom for individuals. And there's nothing really that we can compare Bitcoin to, because there's nothing that's ever been like Bitcoin before. Marcus, did you have some thoughts on anything I just said there? I know that's a lot to unpack, and we did say this was for newer people.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. If we're talking to like new people, they're like, "Whoa, these guys are really spaced out. What the hell are they talking about?"
Right.
But I guess one of the first things you gotta have to be is like, hey, is Bitcoin really like digital property, something that can be scarce? How can something digital actually be valuable or scarce? That's something a lot of new people already have trouble with. Once you get over that, then you're gonna have to think about, the miners, are they really projecting force? What are they even doing, right? They're just guessing numbers. They're just looking for the next block. So whoever's guessing the numbers can get the block reward from that block, right? So in that sense, the miners aren't really securing the network. The nodes are securing the network. They're like validating everything, and when something doesn't go along. So anyway, lots of thoughts there, but let's move on to the next point.
Yeah, I should have told people, skip this if you're not ready for it, right? This is getting pretty deep.
Yeah, well, let's do the news. What I really liked about, because this news came up because it became a big thing on Bitcoin Twitter, where people started. It actually started out with Jason Lowery holding up a gun and a Bitcoin miner, an ASIC miner, next to each other on screen in the Anthony Pompliano podcast. and saying basically like, you know, and I'm cutting short a little bit, but he's like, Bitcoin is like a weapon, and he keeps saying it can physically stop violence. But I have some issues with that, and a lot of other people have issues with that. So everybody started throwing their raw opinions around. And on Bitcoin Twitter, it's a rough place, you know, because people are direct and they'll say what's on their minds, and that's actually how I like to see things get hashed out on Bitcoin Twitter, because people call out bullshit. And you can fight bullshit with good arguments, and we've all been humbled by Bitcoin. And if you're right, it's your idea will pass through the white blood cells, and people it will reach some kind of consensus. If it's wrong, you're gonna feel it on the sentiment on Twitter. And anyway, so Jason Lowery, he got upset, and I believe he left Twitter or took a little break. I'm hoping he'll come back. Yeah, I wish everybody well, of course.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's a lot to discuss, and there's just and that's kind of what we mentioned at the beginning, right? The Bitcoin rabbit hole can go very deep, and that was a little glimpse of how the Bitcoin rabbit hole can get deep, and it can get deep quick. So again, you know, anything that you're looking to discuss, that you want to talk about, or you want to, you know, talking to the audience that you want to think about, you know, there's a lot of things that Bitcoin will touch, because it is money. And you know, will it end the war machine? I think it'll make war a lot harder, because it takes away the money printer. And I think that is what we have right now. Is you can see that war continues to be propagated, and you can have endless wars because you can have endless money printed. And in history, you know, if you ran out of money, then you ran out of soldiers, you ran out of a war. And I think that's what makes Bitcoin also a tool of peace.
Yeah, and one of the things, though, the issues I have is, you know, you cannot separate, just like you cannot put physical products on a blockchain. So using a blockchain to track coffee or chocolates or whatever you want to track, you know, in the food where all these people get excited about, it just doesn't make sense, because you might as well just use a database, because somebody has to enter what's going on in the real world onto that blockchain. So it's always going to be a representation of what's going on in the real world. Bitcoin, the coin is actually digital. It's not a physical coin. So you can do all the math and online. You cannot do something physical online. So also stopping real world violence with a Bitcoin miner, a kid can tell you, of course, that's not a weapon, unless you throw it at somebody's head, like ICO mentioned. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, because if you are all rich and happy, you know, like if you have goods, you know, people can always come and they'll want to take your house or your land or your food or your natural resources, or they want to put your body in jail for whatever reason. So yeah, I don't see miners stopping violence in anytime soon, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the nation state adoption that we got going on. What's the latest news in the El Salvador Bitcoin bond?
Yeah, well, there's actually a lot of news going on around Bitcoin state adoption. Well, at least, you know, a lot of news, a lot of announcements of news, and a lot of fake news or misinformation and jokes. But yeah, obviously nation state adoption, right? Who thought we'd be here already in 2022? Well, we are. Last year, El Salvador made it legal tender. And now they also announced, or they have already announced this a couple of months ago, that they're going to issue bonds. And actually, the funny thing is that today an article appeared in the Financial Times saying that the Bitcoin bond of El Salvador, which was supposed to raise $1 billion with a 6.5% coupon, has now been oversubscribed.
Yeah.
Apparently up to 1.5 billion of interest. So who knows, they might raise the volume that they're gonna raise. It's good, because 50% of what they're gonna raise is gonna be directly put towards Bitcoin. the other half of the money El Salvador wants to use to actually build out the mining infrastructure. We talked about this a bit last week. They want to do the volcano mining, so they want to mine on thermal energy from the volcanoes, basically unlimited power, unlimited mining power, as long as you have the hardware. That infrastructure costs money. They even want to extend it to a Bitcoin city. The plans for that are still a bit vague, but for now, 1.5 billion of which half will go to Bitcoin. Basically, we are front running a big buyer that's about to buy. Well, that would equate to 750 million dollars.
Yeah.
In Bitcoin buy coming up soon. So that's not a small amount. And these are just really good signs that there's so much interest. On the background, the article also mentioned that rating agencies like Finch and Moody's have downgraded Bitcoin's score or ranking to like a triple C, I believe it was. And these things matter.
El Salvador or Bitcoin?
It's about El Salvador. It's so they'll rate just like you can rate companies, how solvent they are, or how risky an investment in that can be. They also do this for countries on a national debt level, and they downgraded El Salvador's trustworthiness, so to speak. And it does have a real impact because, for instance, all these different portfolio managers that manage national sovereign debt or sovereign funds or other types of portfolios, they have to, they sometimes have mandates that you can only invest in countries or in bonds that have like a minimum of I don't know, a B rating or whatever. So it's kind of but it's not stopping because apparently there's 1.5 billion and more interest in this bond. So look forward to that buy. Hopefully we're going to feel it, see it back in the price. But El Salvador is doing great things, but there's other countries. When are the rest? Or do you wanted to say something, Sean?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is right. I look at something like El Salvador, and I had recently, we talked about this bond last week on the show. And, I had recently thought, and I even tweeted out that I thought that this bond would get oversubscribed, even with the downgrading of El Salvador to the triple C or whatever they got downgraded to. And I just found it, I think this bond it's a hedge against a lot of things. First and foremost, it's a hedge against bonds that are yielding negative real rate or negative nominal rates. Like if you have to give someone $1 million and then you're paying them for that money, it's like, why would you invest in a negative yielding bond? And most bonds today are sitting somewhere between 1% and 3% anyway. And so if you have this bond from El Salvador that's yielding 6.5% for the first 5 years, and in the last 5 years, there's also an option of getting higher returns if Bitcoin's price goes up. And I think a lot of people have a great outlook for Bitcoin. ARK Capital came out and said that, or ARK, the one with Kathy Wood that she runs, came out and said that Bitcoin would be at $1 million by 2030. So, if you're a institution that can't buy Bitcoin, this is an awesome opportunity to get into something like a Bitcoin bond that El Salvador is doing. And you can leverage Bitcoin, you can leverage the bond. And, I think it's great for El Salvador too, because if I had the opportunity to lend out, to get a loan for $1 billion or $1.5 billion to buy Bitcoin, and then to pay out a percentage, I would do that all day. I would do it as much as people would give me money, because remember, over since Bitcoin has been created in 2009, over any 4 or 5 year period, Bitcoin's always gone up by orders of magnitude. So it goes up, it goes down, but when it goes down, it always hits higher lows. And I think that's the interesting thing about Bitcoin, is that over the long term, it's always going up. The volatility is sticking around, but it always goes up. And so having a 10-year bond like this, is perfect for a country like El Salvador. And it's a great way for them to exit the whole International Monetary Fund, the IMF, where they give them these super high rates, and El Salvador gets money from the International Monetary Fund. They can't ever pay them back, and then they have to get more loans from the IMF, and they can't pay those back, and they just go deeper and deeper in debt. And it just flips the IMF, and this whole strategy.
Yeah, they can actually wipe out their entire national debt that they have with the IMF
exactly
and elsewhere.
It's crazy to think about that a country like El Salvador, who they've been fleeing this country and trying to get the United States, a lot of people over the last how many ever years, they were dollarized in the early 2000s, and now
they're talking about it might turn into like a new Dubai in 10 years or 15 years.
Exactly. And that's the crazy thing is, and it just goes back to, they've figured out how to be financially self-reliant through Bitcoin. And that's the same thing that any person can figure out a way to become financially self-reliant. And yes, Bitcoin is part of that answer. There's other things that you have to figure out, but if you want to not have to rely on your government, not have to rely on your parents or rely on whoever, if you want to be able to rely on yourself, Bitcoin is a step in the right direction towards financial self-reliance.
I would also like to add that Sean and I have extended knowledge and all the training required to be financial advisors. So please take this as financial advice and follow our every advice to trade and buy Bitcoin.
Yep.
Basically, just buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. And in all reality, we're just doing that. We're just saying what we're doing. So, you don't have to do it. Do whatever you want to do. But this is what we're doing, and it's working.
Yeah. Do your own research. Anyway, so it's also the reason why I have like this nice tropical island in the back of my avatar today, because a lot of this stuff seems to be happening in very nice climates. I love the sun. I'm not a big snow fan. I don't like the winters. Give me blue skies and blue water. I'm happy. So I was happy.
Yeah,
I was happy to see so much fuss going on when apparently there was this news going viral that Honduras was about to be the next country to announce legal tender. But it turns out that Dr. Bob Malakis III, he brought the news. And what happened there, Sean? What's your take on that?
It looks like Bob Malakis may have, there's an old saying in investing, sometimes, just because you're early doesn't mean you're wrong. So,
it's weird because he's made a lot of good calls in the past.
Yeah.
He was always spot on. So you're right. So who knows? There is something there, where there's smoke, there's fire. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we'll hear more about Honduras and buying Bitcoin, but maybe later on in the year, or maybe in the years to come. And I mean, all countries are going to start buying Bitcoin. It's just a matter of when.
Agreed. That's the game theory. Also, don't trust verify. There's a lot of stuff going on Twitter, so you always got to double check your sources before you retweet stuff. Hey, Bitcoin Magazine brought today that the Malaysian government proposes adopting Bitcoin and crypto as legal tender. So that's another bit of smoke happening over on the Asian side. I also read in the article that countries like Taiwan, India, and Pakistan are actually the countries with the highest rate of adoption. India, I know there's been a lot of news coming out of India in the past 12 months about the Indian government wanting to ban it and then unban Bitcoin. So they're already struggling how to deal with this, but that must be the result of all the population running towards the bank to put their dirty fiat into Bitcoin. I would get nervous too if I was that government. Not a good time to be in government this time with Bitcoin coming up.
So you're saying that Bitcoin isn't just for white supremacists? Is that what you're trying to say? Because that's that's what the news would like you to believe, is that it's only for rich white men. And then in reality, then you see, oh, the people that are adopting it the most are these countries where you don't really see any white people.
I guess it really depends on what you read and where you get your news from, because everybody is seeing Bitcoin through their own lens. We're all influenced by the news we consume, the stories we hear. And there's a lot of takes on Bitcoin. And sure, Bitcoin is for billionaires and millionaires, because who can afford a Bitcoin? By the way, you can buy a piece of a Bitcoin, a fraction.
Yep.
It's for people who don't care about the climate, right? It's used for Russian oligarchs to escape sanctions. Bitcoin is for everyone. It doesn't matter. Bitcoin can't see who you are. It doesn't care. It doesn't require a name. It doesn't require some form of ID to operate it. It just requires a private key. Anybody can open up a wallet. As long as you have the keys to that wallet, you can send and receive Bitcoin, and nobody can stop you. So Bitcoin doesn't care. It's like a hammer, right? It's how you use it and how it's being used. So it's for friends and enemies. It's for everyone. It's open. So that's good. Unfortunately, because Bitcoin is so open, it can easily be copied. I'm moving on to the next item of nation state adoption, because the news came out that St. Martin, beautiful paradise. They call it the friendly island of the Caribbean Ocean. It's half French, it's half Dutch.
What are they doing? What are they doing on your island over there in St. Martin? What's going on over there?
Dude, yeah, St. Martin is close to my heart. I've lived on St. Martin. I grew up there. I have family there, and Roger Ver showed up, and apparently on a yacht. I've heard through the grapevines.
Oh, really?
And he invited some members of parliament onto his yacht. The members of parliament had a couple of months ago, I don't know if it's like 3 or 4 months ago, there was an event organized by the central bank to talk about blockchain and crypto, and looking forward in the financial sector, etc. So all these members of parliament, they got like a seminar. They listened to somebody speak about blockchain and Bitcoin, and they got excited. It's a young cabinet. There's a young prime minister. Members of parliament are young, so they're millennials. I'll be guessing. So they get excited, and I don't know what transpired there, but anyway, Roger Ver showed up. Roger Ver is one of very early Bitcoiners. I believe he's like the first to even invest in like Bitcoin companies and startups. Like, I think he even invested in Ripple, and he has the domain bitcoin.com or bitcoin. Yeah. And he used to be a huge proponent of Bitcoin until the block size wars in 2016 or 17, I believe the fork was. He believes it as a peer-to-peer transaction, which basically Lightning does now. I don't want to get into that news too much, but Bitcoin Cash, he called his fork of the Bitcoin network. I mean, the short end of it is, look at the price. The market has decided, when a fork forks, then each chain is basically worth the same at some point. If everybody would have been with Roger Ver, his chain would have continued with the most network effects on it. It didn't. It slowly bled to the price levels it's at now. I believe it's down like over 90% against Bitcoin. If priced in Bitcoin, it's in USD terms. It's going down also. It had a little rise last year because everything was going up. Bitcoin was pumping. But yeah, I don't know. It's just there's like a small community on Twitter that still does. But he actually went to there on St. Martin, and the big news is that the leader of one of the political parties there, a member of parliament, said he wants to receive his salary in Bitcoin Cash, and he sent a letter to the finance minister, which is Ardwell Irian. And Ardwell is also somebody apparently who is into the multiverse of coins, and there's a multitude of coins. So any one of them can be the next Bitcoin or a good way to perform peer-to-peer payment. So why not Bitcoin Cash? And here comes Roger on a yacht, and he's willing to. Apparently, there's a Jeep driving around on the island with Bitcoin Cash stickers on it. There's some billboards, some nice videos were made as a promotion. So it looks like Roger comes bearing gifts, and here we are.
That, yeah, I just look at it, Bitcoin Cash is a cheap imitation of Bitcoin. The biggest issue of the Bcashers, Bitcoin cashers, whatever you want to call them, was that they say, well, Bitcoin should be peer-to-peer at the base layer, and Bitcoiners, the BTC, we remain that decentralization is the biggest topic. And in the situation of the end of the world, there's a war pointed at Bitcoin, all these things are going on. You want to have a blockchain that is the most decentralized, that can't be attacked, that can't be shut off. And what they did with Bitcoin Cash was they increased the block size to allow more transactions per block. And with Bitcoin, we remained at the same block size. And what that allows is it allows for everyone to run a node at a fairly cheap price. And so if you look at Bitcoin Cash, there's not really many people that run nodes, as opposed to Bitcoin. It's super easy to run a node. You can spin up a node fairly quickly and at a very cheap price. And I think that's the difference, is that Bitcoin, there's trade-offs in everything in life. There's trade-offs in Bitcoin. The trade-off that Bitcoiners were looking to were, we want to have something that's truly decentralized, that can't be attacked, that they can't change the circulating supply, right? Because if you don't have consensus in something like a Bitcoin Cash, then it can easily be turned into fiat. There can be a certain amount of people that are running nodes, and that they decide what they want to do, and that they change the network. Where with Bitcoin, you have hundreds of thousands or even a million nodes that are run on Bitcoin right now. So I think that's the difference with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And at the end of the day, right, when you raise if the block size gets bigger, the block size will always have to get bigger. And so I think that's, if you want to continue, I guess Bitcoin gets adopted worldwide, there's no block size that's big enough. So might as well stick with something that everyone can run a node on. It can be decentralized. The miners chose Bitcoin, and all the hash. If you look at the hash rate, which is how many miners are pointed at Bitcoin, the hash rate dominance is Bitcoin at like 95% compared to any other blockchain, or all the other blockchains combined. So that's something that not a lot of people talk about. But you got to watch out for scammers, like a guy like Roger Ver. He's gonna speak a lot of things. He's gonna give a lot of Bitcoin Cash, a lot of money to people, so they will in turn, hype up Bitcoin Cash. And in Bitcoin, you don't have anyone like that. You don't have anyone that's handing out Bitcoin, giving people Bitcoin to talk about it. You have people like us who we come on here and we're just talking about it because we think not only is it the future, it's the present, and it will make the world a better place, and it provides for freedom. A Bitcoin Cash, it just doesn't cut it, and that's the difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash in my eyes.
I see it as a big missed opportunity, Sean. It's there's a lot of confusion happening on the island right now. There's even an article that appeared here in the Netherlands that the minister wants to receive his salary in Bitcoin. So they forgot to mention it's Bitcoin Cash. So it gets really confusing for a lot of people. What is even the difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash? And he obviously also chose the name Bitcoin Cash not to be distinctive. It's so it's really cheap. So this is what you get. It's a free market still. Bitcoin is in that sense still very new, and yeah, but it's a lot of confusion, and for the people on St. Martin who are just most benefited by getting good information about Bitcoin, imagine everybody on St. Martin starts saving in Bitcoin. It could be an opportunity because we're still early, especially at the nation state level, so that's what they should be getting. That's what the politicians should be looking out for. But instead, they just think about lining their own pockets with a quick opportunity of the next shiny object. And here we are. All right, moving on. St. Martin is going to make it. I'm going to personally go there and I'm going to talk to the guys. Hopefully they'll let me talk to them. And Samson Mao also said he wants to drink some coffee with them. So that's that should be at least a good, how should I say it, attempt to push them in a better direction.
Yeah, I mean, it just
So
goes
we'll
down
report
to
back on that one.
yeah. Do you want to go down as a Nayib Bukele who's buying Bitcoin, changing El Salvador? I mean, in 50 years, he's going to be a legend. Or do you want to go down as someone who bought some cheap imitation of Bitcoin, some altcoin, and made your country lose even more than it would have? Like, it's worse than fiat. It's worse than the dollar. Bitcoin Cash is fiat. It's worse than having the dollar or whatever, because it's a cheap imitation. And so, what do you want to go to?
But
I think, getting a paycheck isn't as much as what is your, what's your legend, right? Like, what are people going to say about you? What's your reputation? Are people going to say good things? Are you going to bring good things to others? Or are you only going to care about getting your paycheck, paying your bills, and then screwing over a whole country of people, right? And that's that's kind of what's happened so far in St. Martin. But I have faith that they'll learn from this.
That's really good. I completely support that. And the good thing is we've all been there, right? I mean, they've just started on their journey, so it is still confusing. What is the difference, And Roger is, a very smart guy, understands Bitcoin very well, and to some extent, he can. It's a pity that he took this route. I feel it's more of like I'm not wanting to, to give up, which is he's a very strong-minded person. So it's too bad we don't have him on our team. But when it comes to the politicians, they are directionally in the right direction. They just, their execution is just a little bit off. And they can it's still fixable. They can just pivot a little bit, tweak it, and it could be very, very promising for St. Martin. I mean, even, it's an island that's dependent on tourism. Don't go against Bitcoin, go with the stream. I think there's a lot of Bitcoiners looking for citadels to move to. And I think St. Martin is definitely one of those citadels, possibly in the future, as long as they stay away from Bitcoin Cash. Yeah. Sean, back to you.
Yes. So we've also seen the German Producers Price Index. It jumped up 25.9% year over year in February. That's the highest ever measured since 1949. Basically a measure of inflation. And the measure of inflation is insane in Germany, and it's mainly due to the change in energy prices, from what I read in Reuters. We're gonna keep seeing things like this. German, their PPI shoots up 25%. In the United States, the CPI is at 7.9%. Inflation.
It's two different things, Sean. So
okay, go. Yeah, maybe
Germany,
explain the difference.
Yeah, so the CPI is the consumer price index. So that's a basket of items, and we can talk all about that. That number is not correct, but in general, the CPI is telling you an average number of baskets that consumers pay. So are your expenses for living and buying at the supermarket and buying products and stuff, is that going up or down? Mm-hmm. And that inflation, that's what they use as a proxy for inflation. Yeah. The PPI is the producer's price index. So they also, instead of asking consumers, they also ask companies that produce stuff, what they are selling their stuff for, and are those prices going up or down? And they've gone up now for 25.9%, and this is very often a leading indicator for the CPI, because when producers throw their price up, a little bit later, those products will be in the stores, they will get bought, and it will be measured in the CPI as a lag behind it. So, and this number, I mean, we're just throwing numbers around here, Sean, but like, I believe the average is usually around what, like 4%? So a number of 25.9%. That is insane. This is Weimar vibes approaching. Sometimes I really feel,
Weimar 2.0.
like coming back to St. Martin, I've lived through multiple hurricanes, and this feels like a storm is coming. Like, you look outside, the birds are chirping, the clouds are blue. There doesn't seem to be much panic going on. Sure, there's war in Ukraine. We're looking around, my neighborhood, everything's quiet. Everybody's going around their business. But when you look at the radar, you see a storm is brewing out on the ocean. It's moving in our direction. That's the vibes I'm getting from this. Anyway, I tend to rant, so I'm going to give it back to you.
No, my thoughts are, look, if inflation hasn't hurt you yet, be sure and be aware that it will. I look at a country like Argentina, prices go up every week. When people go to the store and they buy their groceries, prices go up every week. And if that's not happening in your country, it's gonna happen soon. So you have to figure out how to beat inflation, and that's why you buy Bitcoin. That is the reason why you buy Bitcoin. Put a little bit in out of every paycheck into Bitcoin. Keep stacking. Try not to sell it, and be able to stomach that volatility in Bitcoin. But be aware that there is going to be more inflation. You can't just turn inflation on and then turn it off. It's not like a light switch. And once inflation comes, what normally happens is you have distressed supply chains, and because now people are, instead of saving in their currency, now they're trying to buy as much as possible because they realize that their currency is worthless. And as they do that, then there becomes a bigger demand on supplies. As that bigger demand comes on supplies, that means that your money is worth less and less, and that creates more inflation. So it's a cyclical thing. It's this spiral that goes down and down. And so just be careful, right? If you know that a storm is coming, prepare yourself for it. And maybe you don't think it's coming, but prepare yourself for it, whether it's coming or not. And the way to prepare is to continue to buy Bitcoin. Obviously, there's other ways as well, but if you're looking at your finances, Bitcoin is that thing that can shore you up during times of high or hyperinflation, depending on the country you live in.
Well said.
And we've talked a lot today, so we can maybe we'll leave a little price talk for next week. And I think this is a good place to close out. Before we leave, just wanted to mention this week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on the Meme Factory, we go live with Katie the Russian. She is the CEO of Plan B, which is a big proponent of multiple flag theory. She's amazing. We can't wait to speak with her. Also, remember, what you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, don't just let it stay here. Please share if you learned something today or found this information helpful and or entertaining. Please help us out, like and subscribe, and leave a review that helps out with the algorithms. And let us know.
Give us some comments in the chat. Type right now below what your thoughts are. What was good? What was bad? We want to interact. We want to know how to make the show better. And you're really helping us out, because more engagement is always more viewers on YouTube. So
exactly.
Talk to us, baby. And see you on Twitter.
Exactly. And as for Bitcoiner's Guide, episode 4 from Plan Marcus and Big Sean Harris, we're over and out. Peace.